If you're an online coach making below 10K a month, chances are it's not because you're a bad coach. It's because you've got one of these 5 bottlenecks, and until you fix it, you're probably gonna stay stuck. I've spent hours analyzing different online coaching businesses, and I keep seeing the same pattern again and again. Just for context, I've generated over 8 million views, and I've helped coaches go from low ticket, charging around $300 to $2,500 and being able to sell that. And today I'll be breaking down the exact mistakes that I often see within my clients. The first mistake I see is that a lot of coaches get views and engagement and post extremely consistently, sometimes even up to 2 to 3 times a day, but they're not actually getting buyers and they wonder why. The problem is a lot of coaches treat content like a to-do list. So then they think, okay, if I post my 2 to 3 pieces of content a day, that's me done for the day. But they don't actually post intentionally. A very important thing you have to realize is that every video you push out is saying something about your brand and speaks about your personal brand. And if that messaging is not targeted and clearly well thought enough, even if you make hundreds of bad content, it doesn't matter because one good content trumps over all of them. An example of this is that coaches don't actually manage to target their specific avatar. And you probably have heard this a lot, but what I mean by that is that you should always be specifically talking to one person. And not just that, you should understand fully everything about them. The first thing I do when I onboard my clients before they post any pieces of content is I get them to fill out a very in-detail sheet of their actual avatar that they're targeting. So some questions to ask could include, what's their current situation? What's their dream outcome? And what's their pain point? And so the more specifically and in detail you understand that, the better targeted your videos will be. And so this will actually create content that actually resonates with your audience and convert them into buyers rather than just viewers. The second biggest mistake I see clients before working with me is I'm so surprised to hear that they have absolutely no system. And what I mean by that is more specifically, they don't make data-driven decisions. And so what this could include is, for example, a lot of the clients that come to me, they don't track anything. This could be in the form of sales, so whether it's conversations and people they've talked to, or the pieces of content that they've generated. And so what I want to ask is, if you don't track those conversations and the content that you're posting, how do you know that you're doing well and you're progressing every day? If what you're doing is you just turn up every day on the desk and just think to yourself, okay, what pieces of content should I post today? That's not a business. You're literally just improvising. And so what you need is a systematic approach so that you can track what you're doing. And so the important thing with data is over a long period of time, you'll be able to see what's actually going wrong in your business and improve in that area. And if you don't do that, all you're doing is turning up consistently. But if you're turning up consistently and doing the wrong thing, your business is not going to go forward. And so what I want you to start doing now is literally start tracking everything and have sheets of data so that you're not just making decisions that are impulsive and based on emotion, you're actually making data-driven decisions. And that's extremely important for a business as you scale and go beyond. And if you want any templates of tracking, including things like how to track your lead list and how to track what pieces of content to post, please DM me and I'll send it over to you. The third bottleneck I see is that coaches are working with way too many clients. And what is the meaning of that? That just means that they're not charging high enough. And so a lot of coaches come to me and they go like, okay, I'm working with so many different people and I just can't seem to manage that workload. What do I do? And so the obvious solution to that is obviously charge higher. Because if you charge higher, there's a multitude of benefits. For example, if you actually charge higher, you might be thinking, I don't know if my service is worth that much, but you have to realize as a coach, if you're charging higher, the first thing it will do is create more committed clients. If they're paying a higher amount for your service, they're more likely to proceed and actually commit to the task that you've given them to do. And so that will mean that you, as someone fulfilling the service, will be more satisfied because they're actually going to get results. And as the client, you're going to be more fulfilled because you obviously will be more likely to get the results. And so charging high is actually a good thing. So don't be afraid to charge high. And so let's work this out mathematically. If you were to have 5 low ticket clients, let's say they're paying $500 for your service, and instead you had one good client who are paying $2,500 for your services, what this could mean is it will be less work for you because you're having to work with that one client. And so you also be able to focus much better and fulfill with that one client, because it's unrealistic to say that you can handle so many clients. And so it will mean more workload for you, and also it's less results for them. And so what this will mean is that there's more work for you, and so there's more stress. And from the client's perspective, because you're spending less time on each of the prospects, they're also going to feel dissatisfied. So it's just a negative effect on both parties. So make sure to charge high. The next thing I want to say is that coaches have a very weak sales process. And if you watched one of my videos, you know that sales is split into pretty much two things: appointment setting and sales calls. And sales is one of the most important tasks because that is what actually generates revenue. You can have the best content and you can get a lot of inbound leads, but if you don't manage to convert them in the DMs and on the call, you're just wasting that engagement. And so as an entrepreneur, it's extremely important that you master the sales process. And so you might ask, how can you get better at that? And so going back to the previous points, the important thing to do to improve at sales is make data-driven decisions. So for instance, when you're doing DM setting, you have to track every stage that the lead is going through. And when you make a mistake, for example, you need to understand, okay, what went wrong? And so a good example of this is tracking absolutely everything data-wise in terms of your sales process. So an example is when you're in the DMs, you need to be tracking what stage each of these leads are and whether they're warm and which ones you should focus on. And when you make a mistake in the conversation and that causes the lead to drop off, you need to analyze back every one of these conversations and realize what went wrong, because you don't want to be making the same mistakes again. And in my case, I even go into the detail of drawing a literal tree diagram of what the conversation is likely to look like when I go through my messaging. And when I look at a prospect's message, I can see what stage of the funnel they're in and what has worked and what hasn't worked. And so I know the best response to be able to convert these leads onto a call and then obviously eventually close them. And one good thing with the data-driven decision is if you look at every stage of where your lead is dropping off, you can also see where is your bottleneck. And for a lot of people, it's usually one thing. And if, for example, you notice in the data that you get a lot of booked calls, but you're not closing a lot of them, so let's say less than 30%, which is the industry standard, and so you know that the issue that you have is in the sales call, and so you need to work on that. And so use these data-driven decisions to look at different bottlenecks and see, okay, what's going wrong and how could I improve this? And so if you turn up consistently and keep improving on everything you do, in no time, you'll be able to succeed as a business. And the last common mistake I want to see, which I still see every now and again, is that your positioning and your profile isn't clear. And what I mean by that is when you look at your profile, I always talk about the first 5 seconds. So when you look at your content for the first time, for the first 5 seconds, can you capture an attention of a specific avatar? Again, this goes back to the avatar and the sheet I make them go through, because that is so important. Because when someone lands on your profile, they only have 5 seconds to look at your profile, right? And so you need to make it in a way that's not broad enough that anyone will click off. For example, if you're just saying lose fat or build muscle, but you need to be able to say specific wording in a way that captures their attention, and so they have to look on your page. And so by having a specific avatar, what that will mean is when they go onto your page, they'll immediately be captured by your attention because you're telling them the specific goals they want and you're outlining the specific pain points they have. And if they do have that, then they'll be like, okay, maybe this is someone I should listen to and someone I should follow. However, if you can't capture their attention in the first 5 seconds, you've just lost the lead immediately. And so that is completely wasted potential, and profile is something you can fix super easily, and I still see people making the same mistake. And so the profile is so important because that's like the first stage of the sales funnel. And if they don't even look at your stuff or like what you present, then they're not even going to follow through with the other conversations and the funnel. And so you've literally just wasted them from the very beginning, and it's something that you can fix very quickly. And so if you resonate with any of these points in the video and you want to build an actual client acquisition system rather than just guessing all the time, what you can do is you can go down in the description and you can book a call with me, and we can discuss a game strategy of how we can improve your content and your system so that you actually get predictable clients. And other than that, I hope you had some good takeaways from this video and written down some good points that you can implement into your business. And the most important thing I want you to do is, now that I'm telling you this, please act on it fast. Speed of execution is key in business. And so as soon as I tell you to do something, make one actionable step today towards one of these points. And so I'll see you in the next video.